can have this put on our webpage, so you folks who are not able to attend tonight, or if you want to go back and hear something again, it would be there for you. So let me just first introduce myself. I'm Judy Johnson. I'm with our planning department, and I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues. Kumar Nepali has just joined us. He's with our Public Works, our traffic engineer. Also, we have Jomar Pastorelli and Bergen Watterson, who are also in our, they're our transportation planners. I'm going to have a very brief presentation PowerPoint I'm going to share with you before I turn it over to our star of the show. But I first want to kind of walk you through, make sure we're all in the right place of what you're here for tonight. So this is the townwide traffic model meeting. So we are we'll have a presentation this evening by Craig Scheffler and John Burris, I believe, who will be discussing the townwide traffic model there with a consulting firm, HNTB, and I'll let them further introduce themselves. But just a quick little agenda of what we're here tonight for, just the welcome, the traffic model, and then we do plan to have enough time for some questions and answers. A couple of contact points are, an easy one to remember, I think, is planning@townofchapelhill.org. If you email that, we will be able to help you at least get to the person who may be able to best help answer your question. And then, as I mentioned, Kumar Nepali is there, and as well as myself, those are our emails that you're welcome to contact either of us via that. And just as I think by now a lot of folks are used to working on the Zoom meeting platform, but just we'd like to share these ahead of time just to so we all follow good meeting protocols. And so we are asking you this evening to hold questions until the end of the presentation. And a couple ways you can ask questions is there is the chat. You're welcome to put your questions in the chat and we will get to those. And I think the couple are just protocols, I think we've all learned, mute your microphone when you're not speaking, and just in the being conscientious to all of the folks attending, asking one question at a time. As I said, the meeting is being recorded. And we do like to caution you that if you, anything you do put in the chat would be something we would most likely post. And then a couple of ways to speak. You can raise your hand, and depending upon what type of what you're using, either your laptop, your phone, or your iPad, there's different ways to reach the chat, the raise your hand function. Or if you would like to speak and you can't figure that out, just put type speak in the chat, and we will call on you. And that's all I'm sharing as part of this part of the presentation. Just want to check in and see if anybody has any questions or thoughts before we jump in and I turn it over to Craig Scheffler. I did want to do some brief introductions. I did know Michael Parker is here, one of our council members. I have not seen other council members sneak in while I had my back turned there. So if any others are here, please accept my apologies for not indicating or noticing you. And I just, so let me turn it over to Craig Scheffler, who is our traffic consultant that we're working with on this. And just save your questions for the end so he can get through his presentation, and possibly during his presentations, he may be able to answer a question that you had. So that's just the one piece we are asking for you. So Craig, you want to take it away?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay, great. All right, I'll start my screen share. Okay, can you see the screen okay, Judy? Okay,
Sorry, I pushed the wrong button.
No problem. No problem. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss with everyone tonight the status of the townwide transportation model. I'm Craig Scheffler, project manager with HNTB. We've been working on this process for some time now, and really am excited to give a status update and walk everyone through a little bit about the modeling process and what has went into the model, what it's capable of, and to actually let the model run and show everybody all the features that we've been working on. So for today's presentation, I just want to talk a little bit about where we're at in the schedule for developing the model and getting it finished and having it able to be used on project analyses. And I think it's important also to discuss a little background for transportation modeling and why it's important, how we analyze things for projects around town, and how this model is going to help us be more efficient, be more accurate, and be more flexible in the things that the town can use the model for to answer a lot of transportation questions and hopefully solve issues related to transportation problems. Like to discuss a little bit about the capabilities of the model, how it specifically would be used in the TIA process for developments around Chapel Hill. That's the traffic impact analysis process. Just give a rundown of the current model status and where we're at. And then finally, like I said previously, to demonstrate the model as it stands for everyone to see and take a look at. So our current schedule is we've been working on this for some time, and really a lot of parts of it have already been done using other modeling tools. We've had pieces of it over the last several years that we've been building from. And initially, what we're trying to accomplish is to develop a model that can reflect traffic conditions around town for what we call kind of our base scenario, which would be weekday AM, noon, and PM peak hours. That's not to say the model isn't capable of doing more than that. It's capable of much more, but because the majority of the information that we can load into the model right now already exists for those time periods, that's where we're starting, and we're nearing completion for those scenarios. We went through several internal progress meetings with town council to give them an intro to where we are in the process. And we did that last week, and that generated some good discussion and additional input into the modeling process. So that was very successful. We're having our public input meeting today. And again, hope to gather some more input from everybody about their questions and hopefully answer some of the questions about what the model can do. And then later on in the spring, after we take all the input and complete the modeling process, we'll give a formal presentation of the final model to council at a date to be determined. So talk a little bit about the background for transportation modeling. Why do transportation planners and engineers develop these models in the first place? And there's really four major points that we want to use a model to answer questions for. And that's, we want to, first of all, be able to emulate observed current conditions. And so a model that can't replicate what's out there right now in terms of traffic congestion and mobility doesn't help answer questions for when scenarios are tested for future projects and things of that nature. And so we want to have a good base to build upon. And so that's the first thing that we wanted to do. And then moving to the future conditions, we wanted to be able to accurately predict what might happen in the future. So when we test different scenarios with different levels of traffic, different time periods, different levels of development, things of that nature, we want it to be as accurate as possible to predict those. And then hopefully the model reveals where, if there isn't a problem today, there might be a problem in the future. And to be able to accurately and efficiently assess that is a key feature of modeling. And then finally, we want a model that has the flexibility to efficiently test improvement scenarios for roadways, bus, bicycle, all the different modes of transportation, and test different scenarios of, again, getting back to, again, if there's development projects, different levels of the sizes of those projects and what certain roadways around town might be able to handle. So those are 4 of the basic reasons why we would develop a model in the first place. Now, one of the other things to understand as background for transportation models is there are different types of models that we use for different applications. And one of the building blocks of our modeling process is to have a big picture model. And so in the graphic that I'm showing right now, the big picture model doesn't include all the details of smaller streets around town. It typically, for example, in the Triangle region, includes all of the major roadways around Chapel Hill, Durham, Raleigh, Cary. And so it's not as granular. It takes information, it assesses it in bigger blocks, bigger chunks. And so the assessment of an individual intersection of 2 streets, this model doesn't have that kind of usefulness, but it is still useful in determining things, especially related to future growth patterns. It can assess those fairly well, and it's always a good starting point to use a big picture model to then refine that into a detailed model. In the lower right corner, I'm showing a snapshot of a micro simulation model, which is the same that we'll be talking about with the townwide model, where actual individual vehicles and intersections and traffic lights and crosswalks and things of that nature are included. Now, what would we use these particular models for? Again, the big picture travel demand model is more long range. It's larger regional studies, it's regional growth projections, and so it has that kind of status. And the townwide model actually uses the same software functionality that the regional model currently being used in the Triangle is on the same software vendor. And so they do talk to each other, and data can be converted between these 2 models pretty easily and efficiently. So that's a plus of what the townwide model will be working with. We also have what we call more detailed deterministic models. And what I mean by that is these are models where you plug in information regarding the roadway facilities and the traffic volumes and things like that. And it uses equations and research-based equations to determine the things that you want to get out of the model. And they would be used in operations analysis, interchange designs, intersection designs. Again, this type of model was used for many years and successfully so, and it still has its uses in traffic engineering. But what in the last 15 or 20 years, what we've turned to more often is a detailed simulation model, and the simulation being the ability to watch traffic flow, calibrate models based on that, be able to visualize the actual operations, and you get the same information out of those models as you did the previous older type of deterministic models. But the simulation models can better handle system interactions. So instead of developing a model for each intersection or segment of freeway or interchange, we can link them all together now and again observe traffic flows and system impacts, and tying the growth projections, whereas the big picture models are more longer range regional growth. We can now use these simulation model tools to directly input data for particular local development projects, for example. So what do we get out of the model? What information does a model tell us? And I have a listing here of the things that a transportation planner, traffic engineer would typically extract from a model to make an assessment of how well the transportation network is performing. And so it's going to tell us how much traffic is flowing through certain points, certain intersections. It's going to tell us travel times of the individual vehicles on the network, their speeds. It's going to also calculate, because every second the model runs, the information from each vehicle on these models is aggregated. And so we can also know the delay in trying to maintain a desired speed, for example. A lot of this information is typically converted into what we call a level of service. And I think anybody who is familiar with a lot of TIAs and presentations that have been done in the town knows that the level of service is a pretty standard means of evaluating the performance of intersections, and it's given a letter grade, A through F. And so when we go from in those letter grades, A would be a roadway that has little to no traffic at all. And as we go, the grade gets worse. When we get to a D, it's pretty congested, but still functioning. And when we get to an E and an F in our level of service letter grade, that's when the facility is over capacity and we have queues that back up and situations that, again, we need to address with improvements that we would typically look at. So again, the model can do all these things, and the bottom bullet point is kind of important, that the model can provide these anywhere you want to extract the information from. So you can look at the whole town-wide network. You can look at a specific roadway in town like NC 54, 15501, NC 86. And you can look at specific intersection level, a side street, a traffic signal, a roundabout, and things of that nature. So specific to the townwide model uses the Transmodeler traffic simulation software platform. And the primary purpose of what it can be used for is to provide a consistent base model for any kind of future study that the town would like to do on either the entire town network or parts of the network. So it's very flexible in that sort of way that you can cut and paste areas of town that you're focused on and look at specifics related to them, or you can look at the entire town, for example. It also has scalable durations. So I talked a little bit about those AM, noon, and PM peak hours of a typical weekday that we're going to build this initial base model off of. But it's very easy if we have traffic information of off peaks or special events or holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever, that we could adjust the model for those situations for areas of town and take a deeper dive into looking at the impacts of those times. It can also be used for high-level scenario testing. So if we have a development that we're looking at and its impacts, we can scale the range of the development intensity in terms of number of dwelling units for a multifamily complex, the sizes of an office building, things of that nature. And so we can quickly adjust those and run the model and see what's going on there. It's perfect for doing the TIA projects that we typically do around town for developments. It can also be used for a lot of different special situations in the last two bullets here. For example, you could do an assessment of emergency response times around town between locations of fire stations and different parts of town in terms of how long it would take vehicles to get from point A to point B. Mode evaluation, you can look at the effects of running additional transit lines, BRT, pedestrian impacts by putting a mid-block pedestrian crossing somewhere, for example, and what effect does that have on traffic flow? You can also add bicycles to the network and add bike lanes and run bicycles in mixed flow conditions with traffic and see the impacts of if bike use along a certain roadway increases. So again, very flexible and very robust in the ways that we can use this model. So to talk a little bit about inputs into the model, and right now, what have we done to load it up with information that makes it usable and realistic? So we have aerial photography for the entire town. We're able to draw out all the roads. We add all of the traffic signals, stop signs, roundabouts, yield signs, all of that information, the timings of the signals, where the pedestrian crossings are, if there's pedestrian activated signals, and those volumes of traffic and pedestrians, that all gets added in, along with the mix of vehicles, cars, trucks, buses. That's a very important thing that affects traffic flow and mobility, is corridors that have a lot of trucks or have a lot of buses obviously have a lot of impacts. We have that information and we've added it to the model. And the last point about vehicle characteristics, again, to calibrate the model accurately, you need to have a sense of traffic flow and the speed at which traffic moves in all the local streets. So we use the existing posted speed limits and a range of speed for each of those posted speed limits to allow traffic to flow accurately and realistically. Now switching to model outputs, and I talked a little bit about it's scalable in the sense that the model can give you information at all different levels. And once a model run is done, once the model's set up, it's very easy to pull this information and make comparative analyses between scenarios. So from our previous work on the Blue Hill District TIA, we had a model of a lot of the east side of town in the 15501 corridor, which is shown in the graphic at the top. And I drew a big red circle around that to say that when we did model runs, we captured information for every vehicle flowing into and out of the network from all the side streets and main arterial roadways in that model. And then we're able to compare scenarios in the bottom table that shows differences in network speeds, network delay, vehicle miles traveled, how much traffic can get through the network and how much traffic cannot get into the network, things like that. So just as a taste of what it can do at a kind of a big picture level with a larger network. So also from the Blue Hill study, we can drill down to see the impacts of performance along the 15501 corridor, for example, which is shown in this slide. So what we did to assess some of the recommended changes in the network versus what is currently out there, we did a assessment of the change in speed between the recommended improvements and the base level. And you can kind of see for each section of 15501, we color coded it by direction and have a percentage change for each peak hour, AM, noon, and PM in the scenario. So again, just to give you a flavor of the levels of output from the model that we can take a look at and make some assessments of what the changes are between scenarios that we're looking at. And finally, also from that particular study, so the model can pull information from each intersection, whether it's signalized or stop controlled, roundabouts. And so our level of service, like I mentioned before, A through F, we have letter grades for each peak hour. And so again, we were pulling all this information to make some comparisons, whether it was in a table or visually, of what the changes and recommendations we're able to do. So just showing the three levels of output and the information that you can get from the model without actually watching it. But I think one of the most effective and impactful tools that the model has is the visualization capability itself. And so as we'll run through soon enough, letting the model run and watching the traffic flow in the network, it makes a great tool for being able to see where congestion happens, when it happens, and then why it's happening along the various roads through town. And this particular software tool offers some add-on features that if we really want to go and have a particular design for a roadway or an improvement to a roadway, we can add that kind of information to each intersection. So that's shown in the bottom there. So to switch gears a little bit and talk about its use in the TIA process, we have been using over the years Syncro, which is a deterministic model program that we've typically used as kind of an industry standard as an evaluation tool. The townwide model and the Transmodeler software would replace that as the primary evaluation tool for the different scenarios in the TIA. Unless other changes that the town would desire as far as the process of the TIA goes, we would still adhere to the TIA and the model's use and results to that preparation process that is similar to what NCDOT would require for studies along NCDOT roads. So it would still use level of service as an evaluation threshold. But because, again, we're dealing with a new program and a new method, we still need to work out additional guidelines for its use and application in TIAs and other studies, because some of the inputs and some of the outputs of the model are a little bit different than what Syncro was able to do. And really, they're just more robust. And so because we have a more powerful tool, we need to establish some more best practices and guidelines for the model use. And just to give a little shot of what how we would go about that is the upper screen shot there is the townwide model and a bunch of intersection numbers being shown. And so we'd have that established. And for a detailed study, let's say a new development came in, a proposal along NC 54 on the east side of town, it's very easy to select areas of the model and cut out that particular area, and then add additional details in terms of what that development is, where it's located, what roadways it would connect to the more refined area shown at the bottom. And I'll explain this and I'll go through this in a little more detail when we actually get the model running about how that might be applied hypothetically. So, and talking a little bit about those new roadways and driveways that a TIA, like a development plan, will typically have, getting back to the Blue Hill District study. So there were a number of individual developments or redevelopments proposed for that study that also had some conceptual plans for new roadways or driveway linkages or changes to Ephesus Church Road and 15501 and Legion Road, for example. And so the top screenshot kind of shows some of the initial plans for those and how those would be coded into the model. And on the bottom, the screenshot shows the tool, which is called the TIA Toolbox tool, where we can add those individual developments and information about those, click on their connections to the external roadway system or existing driveways or proposed driveways, and generate the traffic that would be expected from each of those developments, and then add that as a scenario to the particular study that we're looking at. So again, we've been using this model or pieces of the model in town for several years now. And recently, when we were going through the East Rosemary Street parking deck traffic TIA process and analysis and recommendations, and working with town staff to develop some improvements that were necessary to keep traffic flowing in that area along Rosemary Street and the streets nearby, we were able to take a Syncro model that we used and convert it into Transmodeler, knowing that eventually we're going to integrate it into the townwide model. And so what we have here is the model's ability, and I hope everyone can see the traffic flow, and I hope it is buffering and the resolution's okay. But so I'm just showing an example of scenario testing. And so what the great thing about this is the model can make video clips that, again, we can always post to the town website and information, and keep everyone informed who, doesn't have a copy of the model to use, let's say, to show the effects of a particular scenario. And so between the top scenario that's running in the video now, we didn't have any improvements. Traffic was backing up. We had issues on East Rosemary Street. People couldn't get out of the deck. North Street, there were some issues there. And on the bottom, we show the improvements of a signal at North Street and some adjustments to signal timing along at the intersection of Rosemary and NC 86, where we're able to clear up some of that queuing and allow traffic to flow in and out of the deck a lot more efficiently. So again, just an example of the model's use and application and ability to visually show this stuff. They always say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and certainly in this case and many others, that's true. So turning to our current model status, where are we at? One of the things that was important in this process was to bring in information that we already have. And so we had previous models in this software platform from Blue Hill and Easttown, and we incorporated information from the University Place TIA. That TIA was done using this modeling tool. NCDOT, and this is a really good thing, favors the use of Transmodeler in this particular software tool for a lot of its detailed evaluations and studies that it does. And so it had done some studies on proposed projects around the town over the last several years that we were able to borrow from those models information. We also had all of the old Synchro TIA models from the last 6 to 8 years that, again, provided a backbone to build on and update from, and that are integratable into the model. And then again, and then, like I said before, we have all the information that the town has provided with signal timings, plans, and traffic counts. One of the things we're still working on, and this is an important feature of what we need to do for the base model, is to update all the traffic count data. And so again, this model has over 100 intersections in it. And we're looking at 3 different time periods, and we have traffic counts from over the last, like I said, 6 to 8 years pre-COVID conditions. And we need to go through all that data and make sure that counts are balanced. And if they're not balanced, then what's going on, if there's a reason to add an additional intersection or what we call a source or a sink for traffic in the model to flow to, so that we have, again, a consistent base year to start with. Because one of the biggest things that we need to use this model for is to update it consistently on a regular schedule to make it as accurate as possible as we move into the future. This is not a model that's going to be a 2021 version and that's all the town, will use it for. There will be updated versions consistently, being done as new studies are done around town to keep the traffic count information in particular as fresh as it can be. So we're working on that step right now. Just to give a flavor again of where the model came from, here's a map of the north side of Chapel Hill, and we labeled a couple of the major roadways. Anything that's shown in a darker blue color there on the right-hand side is pieces of the model that we extracted from Blue Hill District or the Easttown project. And anything red dots are the signalized intersections or crosswalk flashers around town. And so one of our basic goals was to include every signalized intersection in town. And in addition, any other higher volume minor streets or pieces of the town that we've already incorporated into the model. Anything that's shown in orange, a darker orange color, is the old Synchro models that we were able to integrate into this new townwide model. And anything shown in a lighter blue color are pieces of the model that we sort of had to build from scratch to tie the areas of town together so that we have traffic flows that get around the entire town when we run the model all at once. And we included the I-40 freeway corridor as well, because again, trying to include all important facilities, whether they're local or regional in the model. And here is a snapshot of the south side of town, including the downtown area, which is primarily older synchro models. And again, all the signals in red. And so again, we're pulling together a network, and the network should connect along all the major facilities as much as possible, but it's still acceptable, at least at this point, to have some breaks in the network so that we can load traffic from minor streets and again assess where traffic flows vary in between certain streets if we need to add some sources and sinks and things of that nature. So that's the base of it. So now I want to transition to, I think the more fun part of this presentation is to walk everyone through the PM Peak townwide model and what it looks like, and then talk a little bit about how the TIA toolbox would be used in that. So I'll bring up, and I hope everyone can see this. So here is the current townwide model in the Transmodeler software. Again, we're zoomed out quite a bit here. I'm showing the entire town. And so what I want to talk about and focus on is to just sort of fly around town in an aerial perspective and show the traffic flow. And so as we zoom in, you start to be able to see the different roadway facilities, which are labeled, and then the lanes of traffic that each roadway currently has. Now, again, one of the nice features of this modeling tool is that when we're drawing out roadways, we can zoom in to really fine detail. And so all of the facilities can be, represented and drawn in with pretty high accuracy. Sometimes the base map is a little bit older and changes have happened. And again, we're still going through this process for individual intersections, but we're trying to get as close to what's on the ground right now as we can, and include all the details, like there's crosswalks in this area at this particular intersection at Old Sterling and Sage. And so we're having the model emulate that with crosswalks there and pedestrian crossing information. So again, as we zoom in and get more granular, you start to be able to see the details of the model as we're working on developing it. So again, like I said, this is our PM peak hour between generally 5 to 6 p.m. or so. And just showing again the different areas of the model, and I'm going to hit go here and let it run. And so here we are downtown, for example, and what you'll see at certain times on NC 86 North Columbia Street, there's a fair amount of traffic. Some congestion will spill back between Rosemary and Franklin. Again, I'm just trying to give a quick tour here. We have large areas of campus, at least along South Road and Manning Drive, again, generating a lot of PM traffic away from campus. We have the area down by NC 54. And again, you can see like 15501. If we zoom in a little bit, this ramp will get busy as we head on 15501 South down towards the southern end of town in Chatham County. As the model runs, there'll be a lot of traffic flowing onto this ramp, a lot of traffic coming down Columbia Street. Again, we're still in the process of calibrating the model to the extent that we want to make sure it's replicating the traffic volumes and counts that we have. So again, you'll see some changes when we show a final product and what each of these peak hours is looking at. Obviously, anybody who's driven along the 15501 corridor by Old Mason Farm and Manning knows that in the PM, there will be some backups when these signals are running and flushing out Manning and Old Mason Farm. So again, this is where it's at. And the model will run for the entire peak hour. It loads with a 15-minute like buffer period to get traffic started to flow, and then we'd run it through the peak hour. And then if we were making assessments on performance of intersections, we'd be able to go and drill down and extract that information wherever in the model we choose to. We could select all of the intersections around town. We could select different corridors. And again, just showing that information. So again, here's an intersection, NC 86 and Estes Drive, busy intersection. So again, it's replicating current conditions based on the volumes that we're feeding into it and the traffic signal timings, and using current traffic counts to distribute the traffic around town. So all traffic that goes into the model has to flow out of the model at some point. So again, we're still in the process of refining some of those details, but that's a kind of a quick snapshot of where we're at. I'm going to stop the model and talk a little bit about the TIA toolbox function. Again, how do we do scenario testing for different developments, for example? And so I'm just going to pick an area here. Let's just say by the soccer fields off of Estes Drive near Cleland Road, that a new development proposal came in. And so how do we quickly assess that and add that to our model? There's a toolbox where all we need to do is pick a site location. And again, if we know that particular parcel, so let's just say, I'm going to zoom in on the soccer field here. And instead of that, there's going to be a development there that'll have a driveway that, again, we'd clean up the roads a little bit, but it would connect to Estes Drive. Like all of its traffic would be using Estes Drive for access. So we have a new site. And so what we want to do is we can choose the land use of what's being developed. And let's just say that high-rise multifamily housing is being proposed there. Add that, hit OK, and then we add the number of dwelling units, and let's just say 500 dwelling units to that. And that automatically generates the amount of trips that would occur for that particular development based on our existing land use codes that we use in a typical TIA. If we feel that there's reductions for transit or pedestrians or bicycles, we can add that at this level. The vehicular trips are automatically adjusted. And so a lot of this process that was done kind of offline in spreadsheet form and lookup tables in the past for a TIA and really becomes a static, complicated process, especially if you want to test different scenarios. With this tool, becomes a lot quicker when, in this case, at this point, I would just create a table, distribute the trips, and hit go, and the development would generate trips onto Estes Drive. They would be distributed by the traffic counts and flows that the model already knows onto the network, unless I had better information to do that a different way, a manual way, which you can also do. So that's just a quick explanation of how the TIA toolbox would work. And if we had different levels of development intensity that we wanted to test for that particular development, we just change the numbers that I just entered, run the model. And again, the outputs can be extracted quickly and we can make quick comparisons of that particular development's effect on the rest of the network around Chapel Hill. So at this point, just to recap, I hope that, again, I'm sure that there will be lots of questions of some of the details that I went over, but our main goal in this was to really just give an introduction to the modeling process and how we apply the different features and characteristics of our traffic models into this particular townwide model and how it's going to be used. Again, there will be moving forward, probably in any kind of public presentation for a development, the use of the model in giving everyone a good visualization of impacts of the different scenarios and things of that nature. And so, again, we're at a starting point, not an ending point, and that this thing is going to be a kind of a living tool for Chapel Hill to use in an array of different functions. And so one of the other things that had occurred to me is we know that this model is used in plenty of different states across the country, different municipalities, different DOTs use it. But this will be one of the first times I've ever seen it used in a holistic manner for an entire town to be able to do these kind of assessments. And so I think we're ahead of the curve, which is a great thing. And that the model is going to have a very good and wide application for the town. So with that, Judy, I've reached the end of the presentation and would be more than happy to answer any questions and have discussion.
Thank you, Craig. That was, I really appreciate your efforts there. I do want to just point out we have been joined by another one of our council members, Hongbin Gu, and we have one of our important partners here with NCDOT, Chuck Edwards, has joined us. So we have quite a good array of folks here, and I'm hoping between Kumar and I, we can go through. I know there's been a bunch of questions coming in through the chat. Happy to answer any questions if you want to raise your hand and speak. We're happy to talk with you that way. And I know Kumar has been trying to answer some of these questions. So I don't know if Kumar, if there's some you want to talk to.
Yes, I can talk. So
Okay.
there are several. First of all, I wanted to make sure I clarify one more time what Judy said and Craig said. Tomorrow we are going to, whoever interested to see Aura development modeling from the same the consultant HNTB, Craig Scheffler, will be there. There will be two things. One is VHB, who did actual TIA for Aura development. They have presented before. We promised we will come back as a follow-up after the modeling. They will be there tomorrow to present again after took the input from the last meeting. Following that, Craig Scheffler will show you what is coming out from his modeling, from the townwide modeling for Aura development. I just wanted to make sure we do not extended conversation on Aura development tonight, but we will tomorrow night with our time. Okay. Second thing, there are many questions came in. This model, we are unable to collect the data at this time, the traffic data, whether it is transit or whether it is bike, pedestrians, and also the vehicles because of the COVID conditions. We have used the data that we have in the last couple of years, and Craig is able to balance them and is still working on them. Yes, in near future, hopefully we will be out of the COVID conditions and we will collect the live data and then update the model. And we have to do that to make sure the model actually gives us the what our assumptions and everything, what we are making based on the real time traffic volume. Second thing, the model can also use it for signal timing. We will be doing, actually you can use, you have seen the simulation and the backups, queuing the vehicles and all those things, and we can go to the troublemaker intersections or congested intersections and make those decisions live using this model also. Not only that what we use currently, but this model will be helpful. Right now, what we use is we take small corridor like NC86 or 15501, go to each different pages in our regular small modeling software. But this model will be giving us town-wide on the AM peak or noon peak or PM peak, in future off peak also, Saturday for the festivals, whatever it comes for some Thanksgiving time, how it working on 15501. We can use those scenarios live and use that for town wide, not just for one particular intersection. I hope some of the questions that you all put there in the chat, I responded. We are happy to respond continuously now. It's the time I open for other questions.
So I see Brian Daniels has his hand raised. So let me go to him and then we can circle through some of the questions in the chat.
Thanks, Judy. So first I want to say how impressive this work is. And I realize this was several years of work. So congratulations to Chad, Judy, and Kumar. I think this is going to be extraordinarily helpful. So congratulations and thank you first. Secondly, I wanted to ask sort of two clarifying questions. One is, from your standpoint, when do you believe this model is sort of live, meaning you have enough inputs, you've tested enough that you feel confident that it could be used in decision-making around certain projects? And then second question, Kumar, we traded texts about this in the text box. I just wanted to clarify my understanding as it relates to traffic that is impacting the model that's not signalized. So if you have traffic that's entering a roadway that's not at a signal, how is that sort of information factored into the model as well? Thank you.
Craig, do you want to respond, Craig?
Sure. To the first question, like I said, we're working hard. We're close to being done with all three of the base year scenarios, and we'll need to coordinate with Kumar and his staff and review it and kind of have a workshop to go over everything to make sure that they're in agreement as far as that it's functioning correctly and that it's replicating congestion. Because like I said, the building block is to have as much accurate and recent information as we can to reflect conditions, and I would say pre-COVID conditions right before COVID hit, as we move forward. To the other question, can you restate that again, Brian? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, sure. No problem at all. So, wondering about how you factor in traffic that's coming from a non-signalized intersection. So
yes,
as an example, I live off Somerset Drive. It's not signalized.
yes,
There's traffic entering the roadway within about 900 feet of the MLK Estes intersection. I know we're going to get to Aura tomorrow night, but there's a lot of traffic planned there as well. So just how do you factor in those intersections that are not signalized?
Right. And so right now, again, I think I'd mentioned that one of our goals for this initial model, because there's just a lot of data and information that needed to be integrated, and really the traffic signals around town have the most information and probably require the most effort in getting the model coded up. So we got over like 100 of those. And so again, right now the model would be a starting point for that on a town-wide basis. Now, if you're talking about like local residential street intersections with a higher volume corridor that are unsignalized, in the process of developing or using the model for a TIA, I think I'd mentioned where you can cut and paste an area of the townwide model and add details as is fitting for the amount of the deeper dive that you might want to take in looking at impacts of a particular development on local streets. So the model, again, in the future and as it grows, we could add some more of those unsignalized intersections. I think one of the things we would like to avoid is to try and model every driveway and minor intersection in town in this townwide model, because I think the problem would be to update all of that information for the additional smaller streets would be difficult, but at least you'd be able to capture the impacts of a particular development in the area of a smaller street when you did that more detailed analysis for a particular project. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So Craig and Kumar, one of the questions is talking about the output of the model and questions about the accuracy and sensitivity of the output to inputs and assumptions that we make. And if you can maybe expand on that a little bit.
Well, I would say that, again, it's a very robust model in that if you want to make changes to the inputs to it, and that could be changes to the traffic volumes, it could be changes to the signal timings, it could be changes to the roadway assumptions in terms of the speeds of vehicles that are traveling through intersections or along roadways. It's very flexible in doing that. You would just need to set up those assumptions and then run the model discretely each time for a set of assumptions, and then you would be presented with a set of outputs. So again, if you want to test a range of data, it's more than robust enough and flexible enough to do that. And if you were, let's just say, looking at the worst case peak day or peak 15 minutes within a peak hour, it has the flexibility to do that. I think the only caveat is that we certainly would need to have good data to do that. Now, the good thing, as technology improves and we move forward, all of these software tools keep getting better and better. And one of the things I know that, like, this particular software developer certainly is working on is partnerships with Bluetooth enabled technology vendors that give you like Waze and INRIX and some of these, where you can get mobile device information on real-time traffic. That sort of thing is going to be integrated more and more into these models and into the processes where, like, engineering firms like us collect that kind of data for project use, where you'll be able to then be able to make those tests and those variance testing based on a better set of information than in the past, where we could only have like one traffic count a year, let's say, at a certain intersection. So I hope that kind of captures where at least my interpretation of the question is, and where we might be able to go with the models being used for like sensitivity analysis, for example.
The other thing is, yeah, it is true. We have used the traffic counts, volumes, all the data before the COVID conditions. We have not collected any data for the last 1 year in Chapel Hill for pedestrians, bicycles, or other things. We are doing our job continuously, enforcing the traffic by police and other things, and trying to change the signal timings based on every other month what's happening in the community. But the data that we used was in this model that Craig developed is before the COVID conditions. Yes, the data probably will be changed now or maybe in future without COVID. We have to collect data. The town used to do collection of data for all different type of transportation modes, including bicycles, pedestrians, everywhere, all over the town, not just signalized intersections on the paths. We used to develop reports, and it was went down after some few years because of the funding issues. Now this model requires definitely, which we will recommend to the town council when we formally present the model in few weeks or few months to council, that we need to reinitiate that traffic volume program, or we call mobility report. and working with our MPO and Bergen, our town staff transportation planning manager, we need to bring that program back so we can really use this model for townwide to be as a live model. One other question I want to tell you, we don't, well, at least I don't bring this model to recommend to the town council or other folks or the staff without having a comfortability level. I have used many models in the last 25 years in developing traffic modeling. And this is the one, I'm glad they developed this. And like Craig said, it will have more functions as time going. And I think it will give us a good tool for not just for Chapel Hill, for any town, city, they're going to do this. It will give a live model if they have accuracy traffic volume data for at least 1 or 2 years continuously building the model. And that's what we need to work on. Staff need to work with the town council and other town staff and MPO to build it. If there was no COVID conditions, we should have collected the data actually by this time, and we should have used the live data for this year in this model. We have used for the couple of years back data, used the growth factor to project to current year. That's how Craig Scheffler has done this. Yeah, you are right. 100% it may not be accurate, but definitely it is representing real-time conditions. Most of the locations, there are some locations really needed some more data, and we will work with the town council and the MPO to get all the live data in near future, hoping COVID will be gone.
So there's a couple other questions been put in the chat. One of them, Julie McClintock has asked about Aura, and I would like to, Julie, if we can defer that to tomorrow night when we talk specifically about Aura and Estes. But one of the questions is, how do we get a new traffic scenario done? And I'm not quite sure what the question is, but is it, I know we can put in their sensitivities to like the percentage of breakout for transit use. A project along Martin Luther King where we're putting in a bus rapid transit system. I mean, I'm not sure this is the question, but are we talking if that sensitivity to transit share is, is it 10%? Is it 30%? Is it 60%? And how easily can we do that sort of analysis?
Well, one of the things, and I talked a little bit about the big picture model versus this particular townwide model, which is more of the micro detailed level, is one of the things a big picture model can do for us is it makes estimates of transit ridership and other mode usage, and it splits out trips that it's calculating based on different factors in terms of accessibility, connectivity, and travel times for each mode. And so that can be used as a basis for entering that information into this model to account for those kind of non-vehicular trips that I was showing in the TIA toolbox for a particular development. Mm-hmm. This model is not predictive, at least right now in its current format, of the mode that a particular trip will take from a particular development. You have to have those assumptions from another model or a previous study to enter into this particular model as information. Now that may change in the future, that they may enhance that capability. But one thing I will say is, again, the software platform that this model uses, the company, the Triangle Regional model, the big picture model, is the same software company. And so the two models integrate pretty well in terms of translating that kind of information back and forth. So that's an advantage.
And Craig, there's a question, and I think to Kumar as well. And I appreciate this question is, what about access to this model? Can we, residents, interested folks, regular citizens run the model? Is this something, we all want to play with it?
So I will respond to it. Craig, you can assist me. Yeah, the software has a license agreement, not just here, anywhere in the country, worldwide, the software. So you need to have that software on your desktop to run it. It's not like you go and open Microsoft Word which is a general use for the file Microsoft Word. So if you don't have the software on your desktop, it's difficult to run it by citizens. Now, the developers, property owners can request the town to, when they come to the town council or before they come to the council, if they want to see what the quick outcome of their development and the surrounding street network, yeah, they can do that. At this time, as I said, we are still working with the town council. They have not set a policy how to do this going forward for the developers or property owners. They are also very much interested. Town council is also very much interested to have a quick output of the traffic impacts when it comes to the concept plan itself. That was the main reason why they wanted to use a model, and which we have recommended this model for them. Either it will be town staff. So at least for right now, I got trained. More people will get definitely trained for this modeling software. We have a license, town have a license, so we can use that. Town staff can use that. Consultants who works for on call for town for providing TIAs have a license, like HNTB, Craig Schaeffler and other folks. So council, we will be working with the town council to set up that process going forward, how they want us to do this model running, whether currently we actually collect funds from the developers to do TIS, traffic impact analysis, and we hire the consultants to do that, and we exchange that funds to them. In going forward, whether town council will ask staff to do this, or they will ask developers to pay for it before they come for concept plan, so that they have that information. Consultants can develop that quick report for them. So we don't know, a couple of unknowns at this time until town council will approve their own policy based on staff recommendations and public input.
And I did misrepresent Mr. Lampe's question, and so he wants to know, and I think you answered it, but see if Fred, if you have additional question on what Kumar's response. But what he wants to know is how does he or a private citizen ask for a model run to simulate a new development? And I would guess, Kumar, is it anything that is any of the product of this model that comes out, that information would be available to the public?
I think so. Information is public, right? Whatever we do is public. Whatever we do today is public. I think we just have to wait until the policy is developed and approved by the town council going forward with this model.
What other questions do folks have? Or have we answered questions that have been asked?
So let me see. Fred has a question. How do we get a new traffic scenario done? I'm assuming, Fred, you're probably listening to me. So this model, we can do sensitivity analysis. So you will hear more tomorrow from Craig Schaeffler. Okay, so many residents ask me, Kumar, what will be happening on Estes Drive? When can we stop? When can town council can make a decision to stop certain number of units or certain developments. Okay, this is it. We cannot have more things because Estes Drive is going to fail with traffic volumes. This model can do a quick, we can do a lot of sensitive analysis within less time than compared to what we are using before. It has a toolbox that can allow to change the number of units and also type of land use type, whether it is commercial or industrial or residential units, different type of residential units, single home or townhomes, apartments, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. We can go and play with very simple numbers within the, let's say we have 10 acres on certain development, undeveloped land on Estes Drive. And say council says, Craig and Kumar, can you go and tell us right now Estes Drive is having level of service E, for example. Okay, what will happening in this 10 acres development? Okay, is it 200 units of apartments, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, or townhomes, or 200 single homes? Where is it going to bring more traffic? What is going to happen to Estes Drive? Is it going to fail, going to F, or something else? So this has a lot of those things that can be done quicker than the existing models and less cost. When you say quicker means it's less cost also for whether it is developers or for the town staff time. I hope Craig will show you, he didn't show much today, but I'm sure he will show you more tomorrow during the Aura development, how the scenarios work, sensitive analysis work.
And we've gotten a couple other questions, but I see Alan Reimer has his hand raised and hoping we can hear what his question is.
Yeah, thanks for this really good presentation. It's nice to see that we're ahead of the curve on the modeling. My concern, and I saw one other, I think Sam also commented, the model is based on data that is collected. How accurate is, for example, the time-related volume data that we're collecting currently? It's one thing to say that between the hours of midnight and midnight, or whenever you read the meters, is X, but how is that data being collected so that we know that from 7 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock in the morning, the volume is X, but from 9 until noon, it's 0.3X. Does that make sense, Kumar?
Yes. Yes. Craig, you want to respond?
Sure. Well, fortunately, there's several sources of information that we have with the traffic data. And one is that the town and NCDOT take 48-hour traffic counts at different points of the year along most of the major roadways around town. And that's been done for the last 30 years, maybe more. And so that repository of information gives engineers and analysts and planners some idea of not only traffic growth across the year, but differences in daily volumes between a Monday and a Friday or a weekend. And it also gives you differences throughout a given day. And so we use that information along with our turning movement count information, and those are collected in 2-hour time periods that we most think based on that tube count information that encompass the peak hours. So again, we're trying to be conservative in the collection of that data to assess a typical day, but be cognizant that it's realistic and it represents conditions throughout the year. Of course, like another thing that's important, obviously in a university town is, over the years, we're taking counts when both Chapel Hill Schools and the university is in session and that there's no special events going on. So again, I don't know if that totally answers your question, but it gives you kind of a sense of the amount of thought that goes into the vehicle count collection process so that we're getting good, reliable, and accurate data.
That's fine to the extent that it's temporal and that because you show the model, for example, and there was one that I was fascinated with downtown at 5 or 6 o'clock at night. That's a very specific time frame. And it is comforting, if I've listened to you carefully, to know that at least you bracketed the traffic in that time frame to within a couple of hours. It's nice to understand that the volume picks up over the last 30 years. That's intuitively obvious to the casual observer, but when running a model with this sophistication, the input values really become critical to driving the output results. But thanks. I'm really excited that the town's using this. There's a lot to do, but it's an exciting.
Yeah, the other thing, and we have a nice signal system software and equipment in the field. We have a traffic control center. We have traffic cameras. Many of you guys don't know this, but on my iPhone, on my laptop, on my desktop at home also, nighttime, weekends, not just me, my whole team, we monitor the traffic in the peak hours. I know we don't have some of the data recently collected because of the COVID, but we monitor real-time traffic. We have loops under the pavement that gives us the actual data, what is happening on the major corridors and major side streets, not into the neighborhoods, but where we have signals and everything. We're talking about this model tonight, but we already have other tools that to make the decision and to move the traffic, change the signal timing based on it. Sometimes we do. Craig mentioned about special events. University and town worked several years before the COVID conditions and gathered the data for each special event. It's not for just for Halloween, for ball games, football or basketball. We gather the data, how many people are coming, what time they're coming, how many vehicles are coming. All the data was in the system now. We developed the timing plans based on that, and we installed them, and we used to, not now because of COVID conditions, but we used to monitor. We used to have people working on a night time for the ball games from the town and monitoring and see how those data we collected and timing plans are improving before the game and after the game. We're talking about people vehicles coming, people coming in and then going out after the game within 15 minutes end of the game, starting 45 minutes, and see where they're going. Manning Drive, Columbia Street, Franklin Street, or 15501, NC 86. How we're trying to, we have developed all those timing plans working with, I'm glad university helped us in financially collecting the data with their consultant and everything. All this is in place. A lot of things y'all don't know this information, but we do that and started in the last few years, not before that. Before that, the police used to manage, university or other folks used to manage all that and do that. But now we have collected all of that. We are doing it using live traffic data plus collected data. We're doing a lot of things. Plus this model, based on my experience and observation so far, it will be very helpful tool, not only for this, for transit, bike and pedestrians, finding the level of service for them when the games are happening before and after. And we will develop that also using this model.
So we had a question, and to me, they're somewhat related, and I'm hoping Craig or Kumar can jump in on these. So question of using this model in a dueling situation, which is, certainly how does that, what is our step on, our take on that, where we use one and somebody else is using something and get different results? And kind of related is a question, is it fair to say that this kind of simulation model is equal or superior to Synchro in every way, or are there drawbacks? To me, there's a relationship there between those questions, and I'm hoping Craig or Kumar could help with a response.
I'll take a stab at it. So I think in the presentation, I tried to allude to the fact that this model probably has more flexibility than Synchro. It has more probably potential uses right now than the Trafficware, the software firm that distributes Synchro. That product has been around for a long time, and again, its inputs and outputs are based on principles that traffic engineers have used and continue to use. And so the information, again, if it's entered accurately and calibrated correctly, the information the Synchro model is providing is as accurate and should be reflective of what a simulation tool such as the townwide model will show. Now, will they be the exact same level of service or other metric that comes out of the model, like vehicle delay? Will it be the exact number? No. There's two different methodologies that are going on in these tools that are producing the data. But again, if I have a Synchro model and I input all the information and calibrate the model to existing conditions, I should get results that reflect existing conditions. The same goes for the townwide model transmodeler tool. And so I don't say one is better than the other. I certainly, again, would say the townwide model provides more flexibility in making the assessments of these sensitivity analyses. It's more robust in the sense that gives you better visualizations, but it's got more multimodal components that again, with Chapel Hill is a very multimodal town with all the bus service and pedestrians and bicycles. And so some of those features Synchro just doesn't account for in the robust way that Transmodeler does. So I wouldn't say that if there's some differences in results that are being shown, as long as they're not an order of magnitude off, I think both sets of data are valid, and particularly if they're being compared between two different scenarios. So I don't know if Kumar has anything to add to that, but that's my take.
I'm good.
And I see Julie's comment about tomorrow's discussion and, be prepared to talk about what data is put in the model. And so thinking about that, I believe tomorrow we're going to try to do a little bit of comparison between the two processes to see the difference of the town model versus the TIA, what those are generating. And there is another comment about putting in, looking at roads and things like that. And that is, to me, is somewhat specific to the Aura meeting. So let's bring that up tomorrow night. And just being conscientious of everyone's time, just want to remind you that tomorrow night, same time, 6 o'clock, is a meeting regarding the traffic conditions or traffic development, the Aura project, and you can register for that similar to how you did for this one. It is on the town calendar. If you go to the town calendar and go to tomorrow night, there will be a link there and you can sign up there to be registered for this meeting tomorrow. Any other last minute questions before we say goodbye? I think you have certainly Kumar and my email, and if you forget either of those, if you just planning@town@chapelhill.org, we will make sure that gets to the correct party. And if there's no more last minute questions, look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. And if you have any questions, just shoot us an email. We will get this meeting posted on our webpage, hopefully within the next day. It takes us a little while to transfer it into a different format, and we can send out a link to that to all of you. And I see Fred is saying he asked, I'm sorry, Fred, I didn't see your chat come through. So how does the townwide model allocate traffic to a specific intersection from a massive new development across town?
I tried to explain that a little bit in the little scenario that I had developed, putting a development over off of Clellan Drive there on 5501. But basically, so, and I think we'll show this a little bit in more detail tomorrow night too. You just click on a particular parcel of land and you add in the model a connection to a local road or a driveway, and you assign the you come up with the development density of how many homes or square footage of office space, for example, or whatever for the particular development. And then you let the model assign the trips and distribute the trips around the town based on the existing traffic counts and flows. And so it will sort of partition off from the first intersection that it's connected to all downstream and upstream intersections based on turning movement counts. If you don't feel like that's an accurate representation of how traffic would function, and I guess a real easy example of that would be if you had a student housing project somewhere outside the core of the town and downtown, and you feel that most of the trips would go directly to the university and wouldn't go off in a different direction, then you can manually force the model to assign a percentage of those trips to the downtown area, the UNC main campus area, just sort of in the similar manner that we use engineering judgment based on existing traffic flows and that sort of thing for our current TIAs. And you can just make that adjustment in the model.
Fred, does that answer what your question is? Well, just to say thank you for attending. We sure appreciate you here. And we will send out a link to where this meeting is posted once we get that done. And it probably won't be till later tomorrow, or just work-wise, a lot of things have to happen to get that there. So if you have any last-minute questions, just shoot them into Kumar or myself, and we're happy to get them to Craig to get them answered if Kumar can't answer them. And thank you for attending, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
All right, thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Craig.